48 hours. That's all the time I had left before they demolished my grandfather's cabin. They thought I was just another easy target. Some city kid who'd inherited a rundown lake property. They didn't know that the old man had left me more than just wood and memories. He'd left me everything I needed to fight back. What happened next shocked our entire community and made headlines across the state. This is the story of how a simple cabin by the lake became the battleground for something much bigger than anyone imagined. I was deep in debugging code when the call came through. The lawyer's voice was gentle, but direct. My grandfather had passed away 3 days ago. The funeral had been private, just as he'd wanted. But there was the matter of his will. As I drove to the lawyer's office, memories flooded back. Summers at the cabin, Grandpa teaching me to fish, showing me how to write my first lines of code on his ancient laptop. Patience. Ryan, he'd always say. Watching the fishing line. Good things come to those who observe patterns. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and coffee. He handed me a manila envelope and a wooden box sealed with wax. "Your grandfather left you the cabin on Serenity Lake," he said, adjusting his glasses. "And this box with specific instructions to open it only when you need it most." I ran my fingers over the smooth wood, wondering what secrets it held. The cabin key felt heavy in my hand, weighted with memories, and now apparently with responsibility. That afternoon, I stood at the cabin's door for the first time in 5 years. Everything was exactly as I remembered. The creaky porch, the wind chimes Grandma had hung decades ago, even the old wooden board where Grandpa used to write code snippets while we fished. There in fading marker, I could still make out his handwriting. Remember. The best defense is patience. I touched the board and suddenly I was 12 again. Watching him explain loops and functions while Base jumped in the lake behind us. The cabin wasn't just a building. It was where I had learned to think, to solve problems, to see the world as patterns and solutions. The furniture was covered in dust sheets, but underneath everything remained pristine. Grandpa's coffee mug still sat by the window, and his favorite fishing rod leaned against the wall. As I walked through the rooms, I noticed something odd. A photo on the mantel I didn't remember. It showed Grandpa shaking hands with a man in a suit, both smiling stiffly. The date on the back read 5 years ago. And underneath, in Grandpa's careful script, he offered. I refused. "You must be young Mitchell." The voice made me jump. An older man stood at my door holding a box of donuts and wearing a Vietnam veteran cap. "I'm Hal Murphy. Live next door. Your grandpa told me you'd be coming back someday. Said you were the smart one in the family." He stepped inside without invitation, the way only longtime neighbors can. "Listen, son, I don't mean to alarm you on your first day, but you need to know about the dragon lady, Donna Fitzgerald. She's been eyeing these lakefront properties like a hungry wolf. Already convinced 4 other cabin owners to sell after making their lives miserable." I offered him coffee from Grandpa's ancient percolator, and Hal settled in like he belonged there. "Your grandpa? He was the only one she couldn't intimidate. Tough old bird. But now," he trailed off, looking out at the lake. "Just be careful. She's got the HOA presidency now, and she's been making noise about beautifying the lakefront." Translation: getting rid of us old-timers in our cabins. As Hal talked, I found myself studying that photo again. The man in the suit looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. There was something about the forced smiles, the stiff handshake that suggested this wasn't a friendly meeting. That evening, I sat on the dock, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and crimson. The cabin might have been old, might have needed some repairs, but it was perfect in its imperfection. It was home in a way my Seattle apartment had never been. It was where Grandpa had taught me that debugging code was just like fishing. You had to be patient, watch for patterns, and know when to reel in your catch. As darkness fell, I noticed something else strange. A sedan with tinted windows drove slowly past the cabin 3 times. Casino plates. Hal had mentioned earlier. I filed that information away. A subroutine running in the background of my mind. I spent the night in Grandpa's old bed, surrounded by the whisper of wind through pine trees and the gentle lap of waves against the dock. On the nightstand, I found another surprise. A notebook filled with his observations. Property tax records. HOA meeting minutes. Newspaper clippings about development proposals. The last entry dated just 2 weeks before his death. They're getting bolder. Good thing I planted seeds 5 years ago. Ryan will know what to do. Seeds. What seeds? I fell asleep, puzzling over his cryptic words. The sealed wooden box on the dresser seeming to pulse with secrets. The sound that woke me wasn't natural. It was mechanical. Invasive. Wrong. Surveying equipment at 7 in the morning, on a Saturday. As I stumbled to the window, coffee, deprived, and confused. I saw 3 figures on my property measuring and marking. The war for my grandfather's legacy was about to begin, and I was still in my pajamas. I threw on yesterday's clothes and stormed outside. My programmer's brain still booting up, but my temper already running hot. 3 people stood on my lawn with surveying equipment, acting like they owned the place. The woman in the center wore a pink blazer that screamed suburban authority. Her smile as fake as a $3 bill. "Good morning," she chirped, her voice dripping with artificial sweetener. "You must be Ryan Mitchell. I'm Donna Fitzgerald, president of the Lakeside Homeowners Association. We're just doing a routine property assessment for the community's benefit." Of course. Her eyes reminded me of a snake's cold, calculating, sizing up prey. The 2 men with her avoided eye contact. One fumbling with surveying equipment, while the other clutched a clipboard like a shield. Routine assessment at 7 on a Saturday morning on private property, without permission. I kept my voice level, but my hands clenched into fists. That's trespassing. "Mrs. Fitzgerald, I'm going to need you to leave now." Her smile never wavered, but something darker flashed in her eyes. "Oh, Ryan. May I call you Ryan? I think there's been a misunderstanding. The HOA has certain rights to ensure all properties maintain community standards. Your grandfather was resistant to progress. I do hope you'll be more reasonable." She gestured toward the cabin, with perfectly manicured nails. "This property has such potential. Have you considered selling? I could arrange a very generous offer. Cash deal. Quick closing. You could go back to Seattle with enough money to upgrade that little apartment of yours." The fact that she knew where I lived in Seattle sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't a casual visit. This was reconnaissance. "The cabin's not for sale," I said firmly. "Not now. Not ever. And I'd appreciate it if you'd respect my privacy and property lines." The man with the clipboard finally spoke up, his voice nervous. "Mrs. Fitzgerald, maybe we should." She silenced him with a look that could freeze hell over. "Tom, please don't interrupt. Mr. Mitchell and I are having a friendly chat about his future in our community." Tom, this was her husband. the supposedly failing contractor Hal had mentioned. He looked like a man drowning in his own life, going through motions dictated by someone else. You know, Dunna, she continued, circling me like a shark. There are so many violations here. The dock extends too far into the lake. The exterior paint isn't from the approved color palette. That shed violates setback requirements. It would be such a shame if the HOA had to issue daily fines. They add up so quickly. 500 here. 1,000 there. She pulled out her phone and started taking photos. For the record. Of course, we document everything. I pulled out my own phone, opening the voice recorder app. Good idea. I'm documenting this interaction too. For the record, including the part where you admitted to trespassing and attempted extortion. Her facade cracked for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Extortion? How dramatic. I'm simply informing you of community standards. Standards your grandfather consistently ignored. Which is why this property is such an eyesore. She spat the last word like it tasted bad. Behind her, I noticed Tom studying the cabin with a different expression. Not disgust, but calculation. He was measuring, evaluating, seeing dollar signs where I saw memories. We're leaving now, Donna announced as if it had been her idea. But Ryan, do think about my offer. This cabin is a teardown anyway. Wouldn't you rather have money in the bank than a pile of rotting wood? As they packed up their equipment, she delivered her parting shot. Check your email. I've sent you some information about HOA regulations. Educational reading. Oh, and welcome to the neighborhood. I have a feeling we'll be seeing a lot of each other. They drove away in a truck, emblazoned with Fitzgerald Construction, building tomorrow today. I noticed Tom didn't look back. But Donna watched me in the side mirror until they turned the corner. Hal appeared minutes later, as if he'd been watching from his window. Saw the Dragon Lady's welcoming committee, he said, shaking his head. Same thing happened to the Johnsons, the Parkers, the Coopers, and the Wangs. Harassment, fines, mysterious vandalism. They all sold within 6 months. He paused, studying my face. But you've got your grandpa's stubborn streak, don't you? Good. We need someone to stand up to her. What's her end game? Hal, what does she really want? I asked, though I was already connecting dots in my mind. Development. Boy, big money development. There's been talk about a resort, maybe even a casino. These lakefront lots are worth millions if you can assemble enough of them. Your grandpa figured it out years ago. Why do you think he kept such detailed records? The pieces were falling into place, like code compiling. The casino plates I'd seen, the photo with the mysterious man, Grandpa's cryptic notes about seeds planted 5 years ago. Donna Fitzgerald wasn't just a power-hungry HOA president. She was the frontwoman for something much bigger. That afternoon, I drove into town and did some research at the library. What I found made my blood run cold. Fitzgerald Construction was hemorrhaging money. 3 months from bankruptcy. But 6 months ago, they'd registered a new LLC, Lakeside Resort Development. The corporate filings showed major investors from out of state, including Golden Dragon Entertainment, a casino corporation. On the company website, barely hidden in the future projects section, was a rendering of a massive resort complex. It covered the exact area where our 5 remaining cabins stood. Phase 1, Lakefront Paradise, breaking ground soon. The caption read, "My cabin wasn't just in the way of progress. It was literally sitting on ground zero of a $200 million development. And I'd just told the dragon lady I'd never sell." That evening, I sat at Grandpa's old desktop computer waiting for it to boot up. When I checked my email, Mayav dropped. 47 HOA violations, each with fines ranging from $200 to $2,000. Everything from unapproved garden gnome, we didn't have any, to excessive algae on dock posts, to mailbox 17 degrees off regulation angle. It was absurd, obviously fabricated, but wrapped in enough legal language to be intimidating. The total fines already exceeded $30,000, due within 30 days. The final email was different. Personal. Ryan, I really hoped we could be friends. Your grandfather made his choice. And look where it got him. Don't make the same mistake. I stared at that last line. Look where it got him. Was she implying something about Grandpa's death? My hands shook as I reached for my phone to call a lawyer. But first, I noticed something else. My HOA online portal access had been revoked. I was flying blind, unable to access the very regulations they claimed I was violating. The war had begun, and Donna Fitzgerald had fired the first shot. What she didn't know was that Grandpa had taught me more than just coding. He'd taught me that every system had vulnerabilities. Ava Harris. My laptop screen glowed in the pre-dawn darkness as I scrolled through the mountain of violations. 47 infractions, each more ridiculous than the last. Grass height, 3.51 inches, exceeding the maximum 3.5-inch regulation. They'd measured my grass to the 100th of an inch. Unauthorized bird feeding via duck attraction. Since when did feeding ducks require HOA approval? But it was the sheer precision of the bureaucratic assault that caught my programmer's attention. This wasn't random harassment. It was a carefully orchestrated attack designed to overwhelm and intimidate. The timestamp on each violation was exactly 3 minutes apart, like they'd been auto-generated from a template. I picked up my phone and called the only lawyer I trusted. Rachel Torres and I had survived law school and computer science classes together at University of Washington. Back when we both thought we'd change the world. Ryan Mitchell. As I live and breathe. She answered on the second ring. Please, tell me you're finally ready to join my tech startup. Actually, Rach, I need your expertise in local government law. I'm in an HOA war. There was a pause. Then laughter. Oh, war? Damn. Ryan, I need popcorn for this. Spill everything. I gave her the short version. Grandpa's cabin. Donna's threats. The violation avalanche. The revoked portal access. With each detail, I could practically hear her switching from friend mode to lawyer mode. 47 violations delivered simultaneously after a confrontation where you refused to sell. That's textbook harassment. And revoking your access to HOA documents while fining you for violations? That's like prosecuting someone in a language they're not allowed to learn. Can you help? I asked, already knowing her answer. Rachel never could resist a good fight against injustice. I'll drive down tomorrow. But Ryan, start documenting everything. Every interaction. Every email. Every weird thing that happens. These HOA types always escalate. And we need a paper trail when they do. After hanging up, I decided to do some reconnaissance of my own. The town library had public records, including HOA documents that should have been available online. What I found in those dusty filing cabinets made me whistle low. The HOA had been established in 1995, but my cabin had been built in 1987. Grandpa had been here before the HOA even existed, which meant certain rules protecting original owners should apply. I was photographing documents when a woman approached me. Maria Rodriguez looked exhausted. Stress etched into every line of her face. I recognized her from Grandpa's photos. She served on the HOA board. "You're Henry Mitchell's grandson," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry for your loss. He was a good man." She glanced around, nervously, before continuing. "Can we talk? Not here?" "The coffee shop on 3rd Street in 20 minutes. At the coffee shop, Maria chose a corner booth and spoke in hushed tones. "Your grandfather was the only one who stood up to her. Now she's targeting anyone who questions her. My cabin is next on her list, right after yours." Her hands trembled as she lifted her coffee cup. "She knows things. Ryan. Personal things. My daughter Emma has lupus. The treatments are expensive. And if I lose my cabin equity..." She trailed off. Tears, threatening. "What's her real plan?" "Maria? This isn't just about HOA violations." Maria looked around again before answering. "The mayor. Robert Carlson. He's in on it. I heard them talking at the last board meeting. Something about Golden Dragon Casino needing the entire lakefront. They're promising Donna a city council seat and a percentage of the development. Your 5 cabins are phase 1. Then they'll come for the rest of us." She slid a flash drive across the table. "Meeting recordings from the last 6 months. I'm not supposed to have these. But..." She stood abruptly. "I have to go. If she finds out I talked to you, just be careful. Ryan, your grandfather knew what he was up against. Make sure you do too." That afternoon, my doorbell rang. A young man in an ill-fitting suit stood on my porch looking supremely uncomfortable. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Brandon Fitzgerald, HOA Compliance Inspector. I'm here to verify the violations. Donna's cousin. Based on the shared last name and weak chin, this kid couldn't have been more than 25. And his cheap business card still had student crossed out above inspector. I almost felt sorry for him. Come on in." "Brandon, want some coffee? You look like you could use it." He blinked in surprise. "You're letting me in, Mrs. Fitzgerald said you'd be hostile." As Brandon fumbled through his inspection, it became clear he had no idea what he was doing. He measured the grass with a ruler meant for paper, getting different numbers each time. He photographed the dock from angles that made no sense. When he tried to document the unapproved mailbox angle, he accidentally knocked it over, then spent 5 minutes trying to reinstall it at exactly 17 degrees. "Brandon," I said gently. "How long have you been doing this?" He sighed, looking younger than ever. 2 weeks. I failed the bar exam 3 times. And Aunt Donna said this would be good experience. But honestly, I don't even understand half these violations. She just gave me a list and said to confirm everything. "What if I told you that you measured the grass wrong?" I suggested. "What if it's actually too short?" "Not too tall?" Brandon's eyes widened. "Too short? There's a minimum height requirement?" He frantically flipped through his manual. "Oh God. You're right. Section 12.4.2. Grass must maintain a minimum height of 3 inches for erosion control. Yours is only 2.8. That's a violation of the violation." I watched him scratch out his original notes and write new ones. documenting infractions that contradicted the original list. By the time he left, thoroughly confused and grateful for the coffee. Half of Donna's violations had been officially countered by her own inspector. That evening, Rachel called with her findings. "Ryan, you sitting down. I've been digging through city archives all day. Paper files. The stuff they haven't digitized. The HOA's corporate registration expired in 2009. They never renewed it. For 15 years, they've been operating without legal authority. Every fine, every lien, every action they've taken might be void." My heart raced. This was the vulnerability I'd been looking for. "How did no one notice?" I asked. "Because who checks paper files anymore? The digital records show them as active. But the original incorporation documents tell a different story. Someone's been maintaining a very careful illusion. Ryan, this is huge. If we play this right, we can shut down their entire operation." As I hung up, I looked at Grandpa's photo on the mantel. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered. "You knew they were paper tigers. That's why you kept fighting." Outside, another sedan, with casino plates, cruised slowly past. Tomorrow, there was an emergency HOA meeting about addressing serious violations at Lot 15, my cabin. My flash drive sat heavy in my pocket, and Rachel's discovery burned bright in my mind. The Dragon Lady thought she had me cornered. But she'd just made a critical error. She'd given me home field advantage. And I was about to show her why you never challenge a programmer to a debugging contest. The game was just getting started. The community center buzzed with an energy I'd never seen at an HOA meeting. Donna had packed the room with her supporters, transforming what should have been a routine gathering into a modern-day witch trial. 200 people crammed into a space, meant for half that number. The air thick with perfume and judgment. I stood at the entrance, Rachel beside me in her sharpest suit. Both of us scanning the room like generals, surveying a battlefield. "She's turned this into theater," Rachel murmured. "Look at the setup. She's got you positioned as the defendant, herself as prosecutor, and the crowd as jury. Classic manipulation." The room's layout confirmed her assessment. A single chair sat facing the board table, clearly meant for me, while a projection screen displayed "Violations at Lot 15" in blood-red letters. Donna presided from the center of the board table, flanked by 4 other members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She wore a power suit that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. Her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this emergency session. We're here to address serious violations that threaten our community's property values and quality of life." She clicked a remote, and the screen filled with photos of my cabin. Except these weren't just photos. They were digitally manipulated nightmares. The slightly faded paint had been darkened to look like rot. The garden's wildflowers were highlighted to appear as invasive weeds. Even the dock, sturdy and well-maintained, had been photographed at angles that made it look like it was collapsing into the lake. The crowd murmured disapprovingly, just as she'd intended. "Mr. Mitchell." Donna's voice rang out, like a judge pronouncing sentence. "Would you please take your seat so we can address these violations properly?" I remained standing. "I'll stand. Thanks. Better view of the fiction you're presenting." A few people chuckled, but Donna's supporters glared. She clicked through slide after slide, each violation more absurd than the last. Unauthorized waterfowl congregation, a photo of ducks near my dock. Degradation of sightlines, a picture of my cabin existing. Non-conforming recreational structure. My grandfather's handmade bench. With each slide, she painted a picture of my property as a blight on their pristine community. Conveniently ignoring that my cabin had been there before, most of their houses were even built. The crowd grew restless, some nodding along with Donna's presentation, others looking skeptical. The total fines now exceed $50,000. Donna announced, adding violations in real time, like an auctioneer raising bids. Mr. Mitchell has shown no willingness to bring his property into compliance. I motion that we authorize immediate enforcement action, including placing a lien on the property. That's when Hal Murphy stood up in the back row, his Vietnam veteran cap prominent. Point of order. Madam President, shouldn't we let the man defend himself before we lynch him? Donna's smile tightened. Mr. Murphy, this isn't a lynching. It's a lawful proceeding to protect property values. Your own home's value is affected by eyesores like hell. Hal's voice boomed across the room. Pardon my French, but I didn't fight communists in the jungle to come home and watch Americans bully each other over grass height. That Mitchell cabin's been there longer than this HOA has existed. Hell, it's been there longer than most of you have been alive. The room erupted in crosstalk. Donna banged her gavel repeatedly, her face flushing. Order. We will have order. This was my moment. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the auxiliary projection system Rachel had spotted earlier. Since we're sharing photos, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, let me share some of my own. The screen changed to show Fitzgerald Construction's website. There it was, clear as day, Lakeside Resort and Casino Phase 1 development. The architectural rendering showed a massive complex right where our cabin stood. The crowd's murmur turned into a roar. That's not relevant to these proceedings. Dunnostamret. Frantically clicking her remote. But I controlled the screen now. Isn't it? Every cabin you forced out in the last 2 years sits in this development zone. Every single one. I clicked to the next slide. Corporate registration documents showing Golden Dragon Entertainment as majority investor. $50 million in Phase 1 alone. How much is your cut? Donna? How dare you? She stood trembling with rage. These are baseless accusations. I've done nothing but try to improve this community. Maria Rodriguez slowly stood up. The room held its breath. Board members didn't usually break ranks. It's true, she said quietly. I've heard the discussions, seen the plans. Donna promised the mayor she'd clear the lakefront. She threatened my daughter's medical coverage. When I objected, the revelation sent shockwaves through the crowd. Parents with sick children looked horrified. But before Maria could say more, she suddenly sat down, her face pale. Donna had looked at her with such venom that even I felt the chill. That's when Mayor Carlson made his entrance. Right on cue. He glad-handed his way to the front. His politician's smile, never wavering. Folks, let's calm down. I happened to be in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. Development is a good thing. Progress benefits everyone. Property values go up. Tax revenue increases. Services improve. Win-win-win. He put his hand on Donna's shoulder in a gesture of support that told everyone whose side he was on. Mr. Mitchell, your grandfather was a good man, but he was stuck in the past. Don't make the same mistake. Take the generous offer you've been given and move forward. The threat in his words was subtle, but clear. Generous offer? I laughed. You mean sell? Or be fined into bankruptcy? Some choice? I turned to address the crowd directly. How many of you knew about the casino? How many of you want your kids growing up next to slot machines and poker tables? Because that's what's coming if Donna gets her way. The room exploded again. Parents shouted questions. Longtime residents demanded answers. Donna's carefully orchestrated trial was falling apart. She banged her gavel so hard, it cracked. This meeting is about violations, not wild conspiracy theories. I call for an immediate vote on enforcement action against Lot 15. But the damage was done. When the vote was called, hands stayed down. Even some of Donna's planted supporters looked uncertain. The final tally was 12 in favor, 138 against, with 50 abstaining. Donna's face cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally, cold calculation. This isn't over. She hissed at me as people filed out. You think you've won something? You've just painted a bigger target on your back. Your grandfather learned that lesson the hard way. The mayor whispered something in her ear, and they both looked at me with expressions that made my blood run cold. As Rachel and I walked to our cars, she grabbed my arm. Ryan, that went better than expected. But she's going to escalate. That comment about your grandfather. A woman intercepted us. One of Donna's supporters from the meeting. Still wearing her Beautify Lakeside button. Mr. Mitchell. I'm Jennifer Patterson. I voted for enforcement. But I didn't know about the casino. My kids swim in that lake. If what you showed is true. She glanced around nervously. There were others like me. We thought we were supporting property values. Not this. Be careful. Donna has files on everyone. She knows things. She hurried away before I could respond. That night, I sat on my porch, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. The meeting had been a victory. But Donna's parting shot echoed in my mind. Your grandfather learned that lesson the hard way. What exactly had happened to Grandpa? His death had seemed natural, heart failure at 78. But now I was wondering. I was pulled from my thoughts by the sound of breaking wood. I ran to the dock to find it partially demolished. Supports sawed through. Planks floating in the water. Red spray paint on the remaining boards spelled out a message that made my decision for me. Last warning. Next time, it's the cabin. I pulled out my phone and dialed Rachel. Remember what you said about escalation? It just happened. And I'm done playing defense. The sheriff's deputy took photos of the vandalized dock with all the enthusiasm of someone documenting a jaywalking incident. No cameras facing this direction? He asked. Though we both knew the answer. My security footage had mysteriously corrupted at exactly the time of the attack. A technical impossibility that screamed inside job. Look, Mr. Mitchell, he said, closing his notepad. Without evidence. There's not much we can do. Maybe it was kids. Maybe it was an accident. Docks fall apart sometimes. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Right. Docks spontaneously saw themselves in half and spray-painted threats. Happens all the time. He left without filing a report. Rachel arrived at dawn. Having driven through the night from Seattle, she took one look at the destroyed dock and pulled out her phone. I'm calling in favors. This has gone too far. While she worked her contacts, I started rebuilding. Hal showed up with tools and lumber, followed by 2 other neighbors who'd quietly supported me at the meeting. Figured you could use some help? Said Jim Walsh, a retired contractor who'd lived on the lake for 30 years. This dock's been here longer than Donna Fitzgerald's had her real estate license. Damned if we'll let her destroy it. As we worked, Jim shared disturbing news. You're not the only one who got visited last night. Maria Rodriguez found a notice on her door. Her HOA fees are being raised by 500% for special assessments. That's retaliation. Plain and simple. By noon, we'd made good progress on the dock repairs. When Rachel emerged from the cabin, her expression was grim but determined. I've been digging deeper into those paper archives. Ryan, the rabbit hole goes deeper than we thought. The HOA's corporate registration didn't just expire, it was never properly filed in the first place. They've been operating as a legal fiction for 25 years. But here's the kicker. The city knows. They've been covering it up because the HOA generates tax revenue. She showed me photocopies of documents, highlighting key passages, every lien they've placed, every fine they've collected, every foreclosure they've forced, all potentially illegal. We're talking about millions in liability. Class, action lawsuit, territory. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the coffee shop. Urgent. Maria. Maria was already there when I arrived, hunched in the corner booth, looking like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands shaking as she pushed a cup of cold coffee around the table. They know about Emma's treatment schedule. She whispered. Donna called me this morning, said if I didn't vote her way from now on, she'd make sure our insurance claims got flagged for irregularities. Emma needs surgery next month. Without insurance. She broke down, sobbing quietly into her hands. I reached across the table, offering her napkins and what comfort I could. Maria, that's extortion. We can. We can? What? She interrupted. Fire, flashing through her tears. File a complaint with whom? The mayor who's in Donna's pocket? The sheriff who won't even investigate vandalism? I have to think of Emma first. I'm sorry. Ryan, I can't help you anymore. She stood to leave, then paused. But maybe someone else can. Donna's mother-in-law, Margaret Fitzgerald. She lives at Sunset Manor Nursing Home. Room 212. The woman despises Donna. And she might know things. She hurried out before I could ask more questions. That afternoon, I found myself in the floral wallpapered hallway of Sunset Manor, looking for room 212. Margaret Fitzgerald answered her door with sharp eyes that missed nothing despite her 73 years. You're the Mitchell boy, she said. Not a question, but a statement. Come in. I've been expecting you. Her room was neat as a pin. Photos covering every surface, most notably absent of any recent ones featuring her daughter-in-law. 40 years I worked as a court stenographer. She began without preamble. Developed quite a memory for conversations. Also developed a habit of recording things. Call it professional paranoia. She moved to her closet with surprising agility and returned with a small USB drive. Sunday dinners at my son's house. Donna never knew I had a digital recorder in my purse. 6 months of conversations. She's not careful when she drinks wine. Why would you record your own family? I asked. Though I was already reaching for the drive, Margaret's expression hardened. That woman is poison. She's destroying my son, turning him into someone I don't recognize. Tom used to be a good man, honest, hardworking. Now he's just her puppet. She leaned forward, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. There's one recording I kept separate. It's about your grandfather. Donna knows why he really died. She mentioned it during one of her wine-fueled rants about stubborn old fools who don't know when to quit. My blood ran cold. What exactly did she say? Margaret pulled out a second. Smaller drive. Listen for yourself. But not here. And Mr. Mitchell. Once you hear this, there's no going back. Your grandfather knew what he was risking. Make sure you do too. I left the nursing home with both drives burning holes in my pocket. Back at the cabin, I plugged in the first drive and started listening. Margaret hadn't exaggerated. 6 months of dinners, casual conversations that revealed the depth of Donna's corruption, her connections to the casino developers, the bribes to city officials, the systematic targeting of lakefront properties. But it was a conversation from 3 months ago that made me pause. Donna's voice, slurred with wine. The old Mitchell bastard actually threatened to expose everything. Had documents, he said. Proof about the HOA registration. Can you imagine? Tom? Honey, came Tom's uncomfortable reply. Remember when we had to call in that favor with Dr. Morrison? Amazing how heart medication can interact so badly with other things, especially when the dosage gets confused. Dunno. We shouldn't talk about. Oh. Relax. It's just us family here. Besides, the old fool's gone now. His grandson seems easier to handle. More reasonable. We'll have that cabin by Christmas. I sat back, nausea rolling through me. They'd killed him. They'd murdered my grandfather for standing up to them. My hands shook as I reached for the second drive. But my phone rang first. Rachel. Breathless with excitement. Ryan. I found it. The smoking gun. The original HOA incorporation documents from '95. Look at the signature page when I send it over. The email came through moments later. There, clear as day, was the notary's note. Registration incomplete. Missing, required state filing. Temporary authority, granted pending completion. And below that, indifferent ink, never completed. Authority expired 90 days after initial filing. The HOA had been operating illegally from day one. Every action they'd taken for 25 years was built on a foundation of lies. But before I could process this fully, car engines roared outside. Through the window, I saw them. 3 excavators on flatbed trucks. A demolition crew in hard hats. And leading them all, Donna Fitzgerald, with a camera crew. She held official-looking papers and wore a triumphant smile. Behind her, Mayor Carlson stepped out of a town car. They were coming to tear down my cabin. And they'd brought witnesses to make it look legal. Rachel burst through my door. They got an emergency demolition order from a retired commissioner, dated yesterday but somehow filed 2 weeks ago. It's obviously fraudulent. But by the time we proved that, I looked at the drives in my hand. The email on my screen. The army of destruction at my gate. 48 hours. That's all the time the order gave me, before they could legally destroy everything my grandfather had built. Everything he died protecting. I grabbed my phone and started making calls. If Donna wanted a war, she was about to get one. And thanks to Margaret Fitzgerald, I now had nuclear weapons. The game was just getting started. 6 in the morning came with the rumble of diesel engines and the theatrical flair only Donna Fitzgerald could orchestrate. She'd positioned everything perfectly. Excavators with Fitzgerald Construction painted on their sides. A local news crew she'd obviously tipped off. Even a small crowd of her supporters holding signs about neighborhood beautification. She stood at the front, in a pristine hard hat, pink like her blazer, clutching her fraudulent demolition order like a winning lottery ticket. Good morning. Lakeside, she announced to the camera. Today, we're removing a dangerous structure that poses risks to our community's safety and property values. Despite numerous attempts to work with the owner, we've been forced to take emergency action to protect our neighbors. I watched from my window as Rachel made frantic phone calls beside me. We had the evidence, but courts didn't open until 8. Donna had timed this perfectly. Destroy first. Litigate later. The excavator's engine roared to life, its bucket rising high like a prehistoric predator, preparing to strike. That's when I decided to stop playing by their rules. I walked out my front door, past the deputy sheriff Donna had brought for safety, and stood directly between the excavator and my cabin. You'll have to go through me first, I said loud enough for the news cameras to catch. The operator looked uncertain, glancing at Donna for guidance. She strode forward, waving her papers. Mr. Mitchell, I have a legal order signed by Commissioner Bradley. Move aside, or be arrested for obstruction. Commissioner Bradley retired 3 years ago. I replied calmly. He has no authority to sign anything. That order is as fake as your concern for this community. The crowd murmured. The camera operator moved closer. Donna's perfect smile cracked slightly. Deputies, remove this man. He's interfering with lawful. That's when the federal vehicles arrived. Not local police. Federal vehicles. 3 black SUVs pulled up, and out stepped figures that made everyone freeze. FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, and leading them, a woman in a severe suit who looked like she ate corrupt politicians for breakfast. Donna Fitzgerald, the woman announced. Special Agent Sarah Williams, FBI. I have warrants for your arrest and the arrest of Mayor Robert Carlson on charges of corruption, running a criminal enterprise, and conspiracy. The mayor, who'd been hiding in his town car, tried to run. He made it about 10 feet before a marshal tackled him into Hal Murphy's prize rose bushes. The crowd that had come to watch my cabin's destruction was now witnessing something far more spectacular. The complete collapse of Donna Fitzgerald's empire. This is impossible, Donna shrieked, her composed facade shattering. You can't arrest me. I have connections. I have. Agent Williams cut her off. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. As they cuffed her, I pulled out the USB drives. Agent Williams, I have recordings you'll want to hear, including a confession to murdering my grandfather. That's when Tom Fitzgerald finally found his spine. He'd been sitting in the excavator, watching his world implode, and something in him snapped. Enough. Donna. Enough. He climbed down and approached the agents. I'll testify. I'll tell you everything. The bribes. The casino deals. The threats. All of it. He looked at me with haunted eyes. I'm sorry about your grandfather. I didn't know she was going to. I thought it was just intimidation. I swear I didn't know. Donna turned on him with venom that made everyone step back. You pathetic worm. I made you without me. You're nothing. She lunged at him. But the agents restrained her. As they dragged her away, she kept screaming threats and obscenities that the news crew broadcast live to the entire county. But the best was yet to come. Rachel had been busy with her phone, and now she stepped forward with a document that would change everything. Before you clear out, she announced to the crowd and cameras, there's something everyone needs to know. I'm filing an emergency injunction on behalf of every homeowner in Lakeside. The HOA has been operating illegally For 25 years. Every fine. Every lien. Every action they've taken is void, null, non-existent. She held up the papers. This injunction freezes all HOA operations immediately. No more fees. No more fines. No more threats. It's over. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Some looked shocked. And a few of Donna's supporters quietly slipped away. Maria Rodriguez pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. "I testified to the FBI last night," she announced, "after Ryan showed me I wasn't alone. After this community came together, I realized Emma wouldn't want me to stay silent. She's getting her surgery. And Donna Fitzgerald is going to prison. That's worth any risk." She hugged me fiercely. "Your grandfather would be so proud." The demolition crew, confused and leaderless, started packing up their equipment. The excavator that was meant to destroy my home instead became a monument to Donna's hubris, sitting uselessly as its operators fled. The news crew, sensing the story of the year, interviewed everyone they could find. Neighbors revealed years of harassment. Former board members confessed to being bullied into compliance. The reporter, who'd come to film a routine demolition, found herself documenting the unraveling of a conspiracy that went all the way to City Hall. Mayor Carlson, dirt-covered and handcuffed, was led past the cameras as Agent Williams read a list of charges that seemed to go on forever. Accepting bribes, conspiracy to commit fraud, violation of public trust, accessory to murder. Each word was another nail in his political coffin. As the dust settled, Margaret Fitzgerald appeared. Having convinced a nurse to drive her from the nursing home, she walked up to her son, still standing by the abandoned excavator, and slapped him hard across the face. "That's for letting her poison you," she said. Then she hugged him. "And this is for finally standing up." She turned to me, pressing something into my hand. "Your grandfather gave this to me 5 years ago. Said to give it to you when the time was right. It was a key, old brass, worn smooth with age. Safety deposit box at First National. Box 512. He said you'd know what to do with what's inside." The crowd began dispersing, but not before several people approached me, former victims of Donna's harassment, wanting to share their stories. Neighbors offering to help rebuild my dock properly. Jim Walsh shook my hand with tears in his eyes. 40 years I've lived here, and this is the first time I've felt like we're a real community. Your grandfather started something, and you finished it." As the sun climbed higher, casting golden light across the lake, I stood among the chaos of abandoned demolition equipment and felt something I hadn't experienced since Grandpa died. A hope. Justice. Peace. But there was still one mystery to solve. That brass key felt heavy in my pocket, and I had a feeling that whatever Grandpa had locked away would explain everything. The war was won, but the full truth was still waiting to be discovered.